What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here, and welcome to a new album review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the latest album from American-based rock band Foo Fighters, entitled But Here We Are. But Here We Are is the 11th studio album from one of the world's biggest rock bands of all time, Foo Fighters, and this is the follow-up album to 2021's Medicine at Midnight, which was a really enjoyable record in my approach with it because of its very basic and experiments and poppy arrangements. But unfortunately, that album would later on be known as the final album for the late drummer Taylor Hawkins, because a year later, after Medicine at Midnight's release, he had unexpectedly passed away whilst on tour with the Foo Fighters. This had been making a very difficult and emotional breaking point for Dave Grohl and company, and if that wasn't bad enough, sadly a few months later after that moment, Dave's mother, Virginia Grohl, had passed away. The band then decided to proceed and make this very acclaimed, successful tribute show for Taylor, the life of, in my opinion, one of the biggest rocking personalities on a lot of soul and passion as a rock rhythmic drummer, and Taylor had been one of my favorite drummers in the rock scene. This album is the new beginning in a second phase for the Foo Fighters as a band, and they have decided to hire Josh, who also worked with Guns N' Roses, To a Perfect Circle, and Nine Inch Nails, to name a few. So he has been very productive by working with other musicians and bands, but this is going to be a new beginning for him for being the new Foo Fighters replacement drummer. Although Dave did all of the drum work for this entirety of the album. As much as I have been really enjoying a lot of Foo Fighters music, especially into their albums like with The Color and the Shape, and There Is Nothing Left to Lose, and the other well-received records like 2011's Wasting Light, this album has been in my mind for some time now that I can honestly and personally say this is the band's strongest album in over 10 years. There is so much of this big, surprising moment when you will not expect anything like this. Heartbroken, honest and bittersweet musicians to cast everything out from his own heart, his own soul, because there's so many connections into the whole development in this record as a whole, heavily based around the times from the past to learning the difficulty and overcoming these moments through the grief and losses of both Taylor and his mother, Virginia. Superb in a lot of that heart, passion, and yet very raw experiences. From the first opening tracks of the two songs Rescued and Under You, these songs were straight to the point and being so inspired. Instrumentally, these are really, really good tracks. They're very ballsy, full of the action in energetic performances, take a lot of the time and heartfelt expressions on trying to move on and needing a rescue whilst the aftermath of Taylor's passing happened, to the other moments when he was trying so hard to overcome these very traumatic experiences. Hearing Voices is another one of my favorites. The next track after Under You, instrumentally, is one of my favorites. And there are some rare occasions when the band have returned to something similar, like what they have heavily done on Medicine at Midnight, but I feel that the focus and controlled work musically on this album is, to me, as much more consistent in a lot of terrific rhythm and hooks. Hearing Voices is really based about losing a loved one, and Dave has been hearing these voices alone by himself, and he hates the silence, but yet brave performances vocally from Dave, like onto the title track of But Here We Are. His voice shines through. There were a lot of moments when you can hear a lot of the melody, then these breathy vocals to some soft elements into the tone of his voice, but when he shouts and shrieks in his distortions, he just wanted to cast everything out in his system, and this album is a perfect example why I have always appreciated Dave heavily, not only as just a musician and a songwriter, but as a vocalist as well. I have been so much in awe by how surreal and just real everything has been from beginning to end. The Glass is another one when you can feel the fragile state and the whole lyricism about this separation after the loss of someone you love, and it comes in between you and feeling them, but sadly, obviously, you'll never see them again, and you have to accept these things the way things are from the inevitable concept. Show Me How is another highlight on this album. This features Violet Grohl, Dave's daughter, and both of them together works as beautifully. Weirdly, the instrumentation onto this track by itself instantly makes me think on something like maybe a Mazzy Star type of inspiration in that shoegazy dream pop flavor, but it works. That's another incredible moment on this record, showcasing another vision into not only in these lyrics alone, instrumentally, when it has so much texture, from the clean guitars to the multi-tracked vocal harmonies and the warm, cozy, very touching expressions. I really do love this one just as much. This is one of the later songs when it's based around these personal experiences from Dave's early life when he was with Virginia, and Show Me How is absolutely a stellar piece of artistic fronting formats. One of the other highlights is Beyond Me. I think the more I think about these types of lyrics, especially into the overall continuation, it has a lot of these extremely relevant pieces into the darker aspects into life, that we need to overcome these struggles, and we have to feel strong in ourselves, in our hearts. As shit life can be, there's a lot more time in our lives that we have to accept things the way these things were going to be. It's a never-ending progression all around the human condition. Just never forget that you are loved, have the time of your life, just enjoy the moment. You can feel the pain that was surrounding Dave's idea of lyricism, and this is the ongoing theme around this album, not just about the losses of Tyler and Virginia, as I've said, but the theme around that type of concept into showing who you really are, and never be afraid to be yourself with whatever emotions you have. One of the best tracks on this record is The Teacher. This is probably my favorite song on this whole album, and it's 10 minutes long. But what I love about this one It starts things in a minimal direction, in simplicity on the chords, hearing Dave's softer vocals. And then when the band comes right in, the uncompromising yet rocking uneasy tensions begin to rise and rise, and then they switch things down to the opposite of loudness into softness once again. This multiplies various melodies and textures, especially into the hook towards the end of the track. The outro with the word goodbye on repeat, then it starts to be really bombastic in fizziness and louder volumes and compressions, and then switches everything completely off. Some musical ability when it does have a lot of the talking by itself, but when you heavily attach yourself into something like this, this is one of the quintessential and best qualities in progressive for making music, especially even if it's something personal. And it's incredibly melancholic, but it works. And the last track, Rest, this is for some reason like on this lo-fi setting, which is another form in a music genre in a separate direction. Dave's soft, breathy tone, moments on acoustic guitars, and Rest is basically an ode to the people and the band and everybody else who they have lost along the way, never being afraid to show his own true self in something like this makes me respect Foo Fighters a whole lot more. As much as I really like so much of the band's music, but this album, But Here We Are, is an outstanding mournful ode. The only downside is with one track which is Nothing at All, which lyrically is all there, being so lonesome and knowing that Dave is never going to bring Tyler back, while the other songs have a top-notch upgrowing strengths that they have, doesn't fulfill as much into the whole package on completion. It's a good track, and as much as I give it props for the lyrical standing point of view, like with the rest of the album, but this is personally my least favourite number on this record. And also from the last touches of the music on Rest, the compression can be too jarring, that it can be overpowering. But at the same time about that, this has been building so much pressure and intensity when you just have to feel it. I wouldn't say the production is one of the drawbacks. Sweetly made production and mixing. Greg has done a really good job on the production, and as well as Mark Spike Stent, who is also mainly a pop producer. He's done the mixing for this album, and the mixing is just as excellent as well. Overall, But Here We Are by the Foo Fighters is amazing. The more I've been thinking about this record, it totally made so much more of a bigger connection, and with that being said, I love a lot into what this album had to offer, and I've put in as much of the love and the heart for Dave and the rest of the band. They've done exceptionally well, just as extremely as they are as great musicians in their own right. Let me know what you think of this album in the comments down below. Is this one of your favourite albums from the band? Is this one of your favourite albums of the year so far? I'm going to give But Here We Are by Foo Fighters, I think, a 9 out of 10. It would have been at first an 8.5. However, the enjoyability, the favoritism into most of the tracks. This is one triumphant new direction for the band and a really well-made final goodbye to Virginia Grohl and Tyler. What an album. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.